This is collaboration with other professionals, ABA in schools, with Jess Lang, Katie Perkins, Erin Mikalsen, and Maraya Harn and Suzette Wilson. And I'm Suzette Wilson. I'm currently an RBT in a medical clinic in Indiana. I also hold a current Indiana State teacher's license for mild disabilities, preschool through 12th grade. Prior to becoming an RBT, I taught developmental preschool for several years. I also have worked as an assistant in special education classrooms all the way up to severe disabilities. In addition to working with clientele on the autism spectrum, I also have family members on the spectrum, and I will be presenting the con side as a prover.
I'm Maraya, and I have been in the ABA field for 5+ years. I am currently working as an assistant behavioral analyst in Wisconsin. I primarily work in-home and center-based. I have experience working with children ranging from 1.5 years to 17 years old. I will be presenting the pro side as the prover.
I'm Jess. I've been in the ABA field since 2011 when I started working with adults with developmental disabilities in their homes. Currently, I'm working with adults with autism in a day program as a behavior assistant. I have experience working with children providing in-home ABA services as well. And today I'll be presenting the pro side as the stater.
I'm Katie Perkins. I have been in the ABA field for a little over 2 years now. I currently work in an early intervention behavioral center with children ages 2 to 6 who have been diagnosed with autism and experience a wide variety of behavioral and developmental disabilities. I will be double presenting and will be taking on the role of attacker for the pro side and stater for the con side.
Hi, I'm Erin Mikalsen. I will be the attacker for the con side. I have worked in this field for about 2+ years now. I mainly work with the early intervention age up to elementary school age. I now work with about like half the time in clinic and then half the time in schools. I go to a variety of different schools as well, including general education classrooms, ESC classrooms, and combinations of both.
The first topic we will be discussing is ABA implementation and training. The number of children who are diagnosed with autism continues to increase each year, and with that increase comes an increase in the need for ABA services within school districts. School districts without ABA involved are responsible for designing protocols that are effective in teaching, ways to train staff for implementation, and to develop ways to monitor the progress of these programs for these students. This task alone is difficult. However, if school districts were collaborating with behavior analysts as a team, it would be a greater relief for the school district. Behavior analysts use scientifically proven interventions to address changing behaviors amongst children with autism. Behavior analysts are able to train teachers, paraprofessionals, parents, and others who are working in the school on these various interventions, how to implement them, and how to collect the data correctly. The code relating to this topic is 2.14, selecting, designing, and implementing behavior change interventions.
Some articles proving this is Layden et al. Article states that BCBAs under the collaboration standard will collaborate with school personnel, outside providers, speech-language pathologists, occupational and physical therapists, and families to provide the best treatment for each child. They also stated that BCBAs under the collaboration standards, that was the same thing. They also stated that having school-based behavior analysts will allow for effective and efficient implementation of interventions. This is because behavior analysts are taught how to effectively implement interventions. Therefore, BCBAs can train special education teachers how to appropriately implement interventions, increasing the special education teacher's scope of competence. Leno also has a standard and standard 3 systems capacity building, where professional development, BCBAs will provide professional development opportunities, including coaching to improve staff understanding and performance of behavioral interventions and support. Evaluate effectiveness of the professional development and coaching using data to inform practice related to behavioral and system change initiatives and interventions. Shepley and Grissom Brown article states that behavior analysts can assist school staff by knowing A, what a student's communicative behavior looks like, B, why the behavior is occurring, and C, what is maintaining the behavior are critical questions to answer when identifying communication skills to target for instruction and development communication interventions. Another article to prove this is Lyons. BCBAs can affect the school climate by working with school staff to provide adequate support for students who engage in problem behaviors. BCBAs can also help teachers build rapport with difficult students and improve their interpersonal relationships. Working with teachers and administration, BCBAs can implement positive behavioral strategies school-wide and in the classroom and help shape organizational structure. They can also provide more intensive interventions for individual students to help these students progress towards school and individual goals. Lyons also states that BCBAs are equipped to provide this direct intervention to struggling staff, while also making sure all staff are implementing SWPBIS with fidelity.
The Satyr from the pro side made a good point when they said that the number of children who are diagnosed with autism continues to increase each year. And with that increase comes an increase in the need for ABA services within school districts. But there are some very important issues that may centralize around this idea. In addition to the training that teachers already receive in order to lead their classrooms, training surrounding ABA interventions may take too much time and effort to be effective. And even if we lived in a world where there was enough time and energy available to teach these interventions effectively, there are still questions surrounding whether or not these trained teachers will be able to implement treatments to fidelity and in line with the BACB Code of Ethics. The codes related to this topic are 1.05, practicing within scope of competence, and 2.01, providing effective treatment.
In the Kelly and Barnes Holmes article from 2014, the authors point out that teachers who are not trained in ABA consider taking time off recess more acceptable than using peer tutors. The implementation of ABA procedures requires the teachers to find those procedures acceptable. Acceptability is influenced by how hard it is for them to implement and how time-consuming it is to implement. The issue of implementation of how teachers perceive punishment versus how ABA procedures are implemented by teachers who are also trained in ABA. The findings of this article show that the acceptability of interventions by school professionals directly affects the implementation of ABA interventions. The authors discuss the impact of teachers without ABA training being pro-punishment versus teachers with ABA training being pro-reinforcement. In schools, punishment in the form of taking time off recess, timeout, detention, and suspension are still commonplace. The authors note that experienced teachers perceive timeout more acceptable than working in a positive manner, giving reinforcement. These findings reflect the fact that most teachers focus on reactive versus proactive measures. The amount of time required to determine each child's behavior function, implementing positive antecedent strategies, and using data to create necessary interventions for individual students is insurmountable when a teacher is teaching 20 or more children. Society affects schools more based on academic test scores, and teachers are judged based on academics and also in the media. Teachers must attend to all students' academic behavior, which leaves less attention to taking data on behaviors of students individually to determine the best intervention for them. In the Skinner and Hales article, teacher training does not include training on ABA interventions, and teachers may not be able to consistently implement ABA. Max and Albright point out that the need for pre-service training in ABA for teachers is important. ABA is not just for autism. The article discusses the fact that ABA is considered an evidence-based practice for all schools. By implementing the PBIS, which is an application of ABA, However, BCBA's struggle to have enough time to train the teachers to implement the programs to fidelity. As they also discuss, the loss of fidelity and integrity lead to ineffective interventions that lead to more disruptive behaviors. And as Shepley and Grissom Brown in 2018 pointed out, federal policy in the Individuals with Disabilities Act of 2004, which is IDEA, emphasized the implementation by teachers to utilize positive behavior interventions and evidence-based practices in order to provide necessary support for all children with disabilities. In 2006, IDEA was revised to include each state to utilize the core principles of ABA in an RTI or a response to intervention program to address behaviors. The core principles include progress through monitoring through formative assessments conducted on a consistent basis, using preventative or antecedent strategies for instruction and behavior intervention, and individualized interventions. In spite of these measures, financial backing and education for teachers to be able to implement ABA to fidelity is lacking. The teachers are not taught to conduct functional behavior assessments or functional analysis. School districts control where the federal and state monies for implementing evidence-based practices such as SWPBIS, which is school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports, which was mentioned in the Horner and Sugai 2015 article. The feasibility of a BCBA to teach teachers to collect the necessary data to provide individualized interventions to fidelity while these teachers are teaching 20 to 30 children per class is both financially impossible, and there's not enough time for the teachers to teach and to take data at the same time. In 2021, Leaf et al. And Cutting in 2023 addressed the neurodiversity movement as it affects the implementation of evidence-based ABA principles in schools. The concerns about ABA historically from the not so distant past being harmful to those that are neurodiverse, including those on the autism spectrum, is discussed. In schools, behaviors that are seen by society on the news are what gets the most attention. However, from the neurodivergent perception of procedures to decrease behaviors that interfere with other students' learning, it has come to light that many feel that they are being forced to conform to societal norms versus being themselves. This relates to teachers in schools today needing to focus on providing every student with not only academics, but emotional and compassionate support.
The second topic of this debate is evidence-based practices. Behavior analysts are knowledgeable in many different areas, including skill acquisition, maintenance, and generalization. They are able to implement various proven, effective science-based interventions such as task analysis, shaping, discrete trial instruction, teaching verbal behavior, imitation skills, social skills, and instructional control for students. Behavior analysts will conduct different indirect and direct assessments to find the function of a student's behavior in order to ensure that the intervention chosen is individualized to the student. The codes that relate to this topic are 2.01, providing effective treatment.
Some articles that prove that evidence-based practice should be in schools is Layden et al. Article offers guidelines for BCBAs in school settings. So some of the guidelines are, the first one is ethical and professional practice. They promote ethical and professional practice within their scope of competence, following laws, regulations, and policies. 2 is collaboration. Collaborate with stakeholders to practice within and to expand their scope of competence to improve outcomes for students. They will do this by designing, implementing, and/or evaluating services that are culturally and contextually appropriate to improve socially significant behavior. 3 is systems capacity building. Professional development. BCBAs will provide professional development opportunities, including coaching, to improve staff understanding and performance of behavioral interventions and support. 4 is instruction. BCBAs improve instructional programs, services, and supports by applying their knowledge of ABA at the student's classroom and school-wide system levels. Leadership and policies. Number 5, BCBAs are leaders within the school system, modeling and promoting meaningful change through data-informed decision-making and fostering an inclusive, culturally responsive, and productive climate at the student's classroom, school, and school system levels. Lyons states that schools have the ability to change a student's trajectory by implementing evidence-based behavior support, and BCBAs can help schools achieve these goals. Another article is Dunlap et al. 2010 states ABA has proven to be extremely valuable in virtually all aspects of the education enterprise, including instructional design, classroom systems of motivation and behavior management, individual behavior supports, school-wide behavior support, and the many realms of assessment. They also stated ABA has been demonstrated to be effective in all educational areas and with a full range of students, populations, but it mostly contribution has been in special education. Curriculum-based assessment constitutes an existing application of behavior analysis within education that is relevant for a very wide population of students who are engaged with academic curricula. CBA comprises of a set of processes that allow professionals conduct assessments and analyze of academic behavior, each capable of making valuable contributions to instructional modifications and planning. CBA can be used to improve academic instruction in a variety of ways, to reliably determine instructional placement, to identify students' strengths and weaknesses, and to monitor short and long-term progress.
While ABA therapists may be well versed in treatments for individuals with ASD, it took a lot of time and resources in order to become competent in the areas they were implementing. They seek a higher education specifically for the implementation of ABA practices and the related areas surrounding the BACB. Teachers seek a higher education for the sole purpose of teaching. They do not learn about direct assessments to determine behavioral functions or about how to increase a wanted behavior or to decrease a problem behavior. Expecting teachers to be able to gain the knowledge of ABA treatments to the level of effective implementation while also dealing with the day-to-day responsibilities of their job in the educational field may be too much to ask of one person. The code related to this topic is 2.01, providing effective treatment.
Once again, in the Kelly and Barnes Holmes article, they discussed a study they conducted using the Treatment Acceptability Rating Form Revised, or TARF-R. The study focused on the use of reinforcement versus punishment ABA interventions in schools. The issue of whether it is acceptable for teachers and the public, not whether it is evidence-based practiced. ABA has been proven scientifically to be valuable when it comes to supporting children with ASD, and that role should be shared within the schools as well. ABA has proven effective as an evidence-based intervention for all students. However, articles by McMahon et al. In 2021 and Donaldson and Stamer 2014 both discuss ABA interventions and treatments using behavioral jargon has negatively influenced ABA's social acceptability and usage within schools by teachers who are unfamiliar with the technical terms of behavior. In the Gischler and Riffle article, the time aspect of implementation of evidence-based ABA fidelity is not practical. It's too time-consuming, and general education teachers using ABA in the classroom for classroom management requires time and effort on top of the teaching. They also discussed general education teachers are not confident in managing challenging behaviors because they're not trained. BCBAs are required to provide effective treatments. In order to do that, they must follow the data. In order to collect the necessary data to drive the implementation of those evidence-based interventions, teachers must be trained in how to collect the data and be able to collect it while teaching. As the authors point out, the magnitude of challenging behaviors class sizes and increased pressure on teachers to improve student academic achievement performance inhibits the implementation of ABA to fidelity. One of the points made by the authors is that the pre-service teachers need to be educated in fundamental ABA practices. Unfortunately, for example, many teachers reinforce attention-seeking behaviors because they are uneducated in functions of behaviors, the antecedents and the consequences of behaviors that they see, and how to collect data for the treatment fidelity. And Mumford and Thoreau in 2014 also addressed the complex environment of schools because the classroom is unable to be an ABA laboratory. As authors point out, BCBAs are required to provide effective treatments based on evidence-based practices. And in a classroom, the ability to control the confounding variables and to accurately collect the data to create the effective treatments for challenging behaviors is not as manageable as an ABA clinic or laboratory.
The third and final topic of this debate is HIPAA. Behavior analysts have a code of ethics that they follow. In this code of ethics, behavior analysts are required to collaborate with colleagues from their own and other professions while having the best interests of the clients and stakeholders. All service providers who work in the fields of ABA must follow all regulations regarding HIPAA. The codes related to this topic are 2.10, collaborating with colleagues, and 1.04, practicing within a defined role.
An article that proves that they should be in schools is Feinberg and Vecca article states that HIPAA protects the rights of the client, where IDA does not. IDA also ignores cost issues, where HIPAA does not care about cost issues and will provide services no matter what cost, as long as it is beneficial.
Behavior analysts oftentimes have 5 to 6 clients on their caseload, meaning that they are able to spend immense amounts of time focusing on the treatment procedures for each client. Teachers, on the other hand, have more than 5 to 6 individuals in their classrooms. Because of this, they may not be able to give each child the attention and support that they need and or deserve. Another issue that comes up with an increase in class sizes has to do with confidentiality laws that are expected to be followed by teachers. Teachers and behavior analysts have very different sets of rules that they must follow in order to protect themselves and their clients. The codes related to this topic are 2.04, disclosing confidential information, and 3.03, accepting clients.
In the Leaf et al. Article, the class sizes prohibit 1-to-1 ratio for ABA neurotypical and divergent kids don't benefit when they're placed in several groups. They do pull out classes for some things in elementary, but middle school and high school, they do not. But their article raises the concern about ABA-based interventions and the HIPAA laws. In 2021, Leaf et al. And Cutting in 2023 addressed the neurodiversity movement that we discussed earlier as it affects the implementation of evidence-based ABA principles in school. But the concerns about ABA historically is more about what can we use in school. The HIPAA law affects the VCBAs, and HIPAA protects the individual's identifiable health information, biometric identifiers, photos with face visible, geographic data, and any dates with their medical information. In schools, they follow FERPA, which covers personal data, educational data, medical data from school nurses, and directory information. So if a BCBA goes into a school and teaches a teacher about the principles and shows them how to implement a program, they have to provide information about the student. Now, the teacher goes and shares that information with a substitute teacher, for instance. Then we have no control over that information being spread on social media or spread around the building. That's a violation of HIPAA, which isn't covered in the BCBA's ethics guidelines. The Syed article also focused on the ABA ethics hotline, and he discussed emphasis on increased potential of violating not only the BACB ethics, but the HIPAA laws. BCBAs who practice in schools are not only expected to follow the laws governing school districts, such as FERPA and the IEP meetings, but they also must adhere to applicable laws and regulations regarding HIPAA. Due to the confidentiality minefield for BCBAs in schools, teachers need to be looped into what they can and cannot discuss regarding the student in order for the BCBA to remain within their ethical obligations. For example, all emails that are sent or documents sent from a BCBA to a teacher must carry a notice regarding HIPAA. Phones have to have a passcode in order for emails to be seen on a phone with handling client information. Syed also looked at the caseloads and practicing ethically in school. He also noted that the BACB's current statistics show that 12.24% of the BCBAs, or about 870 out of 34,471 certified BCBAs, state that they work in education. The ABAethicsHotline.com is used in his article to show the mounting difficulty for BCBAs and what they're experiencing with maintaining their ethics within the school setting. The large caseloads create an inability to control and to manage ABA data required by HIPAA. Schools are not mandated to follow HIPAA. However, it is up to the BCBA to follow it. In order to provide training to teachers, paraprofessionals, etc., within the school setting, maintaining privacy as dictated by HIPAA becomes increasingly insurmountable to control. As I stated before, if a teacher shares information that the BCBA gave them to her, gives it to her assistant or paraprofessional or a substitute teacher or even the principal of another school, the BCBA is no longer in control over that private information, yet they're held responsible for any breach of the HIPAA law. Also, the BCBA is not able to keep the client's identification private as required by HIPAA if they are pictured in a classroom and it's posted on social media. If an assistant who doesn't know any better takes a picture of a student and shares it on Facebook, they just violated HIPAA. And the gravity of that hits the BCBAs the most. So allowing the teachers to know that is the best way to keep HIPAA laws.
So, as stated, when talking about in regards to ABA implementation and training in schools, as you stated, the instructional design classrooms and behavior management supports would be implemented into the education enterprise. With that, would that mean that there's going to be a national or standardized implementation guide for everyone? And like, how would this information be instructed to each individual school, and how would it also be enforced? Because that would be a lot of stress on the BCBA, and that is not in their competency to be giving these information to all the schools. Another potential issue is how to deal with the old ways of thinking and how you could change some of the personal biases that some of the older professionals may have. And regarding to the old ways of thinking, I'm referring to the older population that was taught differently than the current use of ABA. And as you know, this field has grown immensely within the past few decades. And as we know, when implementing trainings, cost can be an issue. As one of the articles stated, that there is a finite budgets for students already, but will that funding also go towards the trainings and hiring other people to do these trainings? And if so, where would the funding come from? And again, as stated in the Layton article, the BCBA would be in charge of overseeing the trainings and professionals, but who would their jurisdiction be over? Would it just be under the RBTs and the teachers, or would it be further into the nurses and the principals and everybody else working within that school? It would be hard to set certain lines or certain rules that you can't make other people enforce. Especially if in these treatments, other medical professions are required for the clients, like speech, OT, and PT, because that means that billing and insurance can also be disturbed in the way that those are given out.
One of the things that I wanted to share is my experience as a teacher, a special education teacher, and I still have my license for Indiana. 10 years ago, I had a BCBA and an RBT that were in my classroom in a school. They were seen as outsiders. They were not even treated the same as the OTs, PTs, or speech pathologists, which were also outside services. The ABA therapists were not treated the same. As a teacher, I was not encouraged to follow the suggestions of the BCBA or the BCBA's RBT that was in there. They were in with my student, but when they were with my student, I was to step back and let them work with that student solely. Clearly, the future of ABA in school, this debate topic goes well beyond the scope of this presentation. We are just scratching the surface of this debate. In the future, pre-service teachers and pre-BCBA practitioners will be taught their counterparts' job as well as their own. It will, as special education teacher who now is an RBT and getting a master's in ABA in autism, I see the need for both professions to collaborate at the education level for bachelor's degrees and master's programs. ABA is better today because of the last 30 or 40 years of research. In 10 or more years, what we are seeing and experiencing in this debate will be the union of best practices for training for pre-service professionals and teachers to improve the outcome for all students. And that was also mentioned in the Lauderdale, Litton, and Brennan article in 2018. And ABA is an evidence-based practice. The federal government has already said that. It's not only for kids on the spectrum, but for all students, as evidenced by the use of ABA-inspired PBIS, where the school-wide positive behavior interventions. Dunlap et al. In 2001 mentioned that, and Horner-Sugay in 2015, and Ketting again in 2023. I think we're in the middle of a lot of change that's coming, and it's an exciting time. And I know, Erin, you had some personal experience being in a school as well.
Yes. So I have just recently started working in school and have seen all of these pros and cons sides from each side. I have to say that I have gotten more experience or good experiences where my teachers have been wanting to work with me, but you can tell that there's a large divide in what they know and what we know. And again, I've been lucky that they have been easy to collaborate with and have followed my instructions, thankfully. But I've also ran into issues where ethics fall into place, and I'm in the rules where I'm not allowed to go certain places with kids. That really strains my side, because I have to tippy-toe around the rules to make sure that I don't get in trouble as well. But as I was saying, I can definitely tell that the times are shifting and more people are open to receiving instructions, and they want to help these kids. They just do not know how.
I know I'm in Indiana. If everybody say which states you guys are located in again. I know, Maraya, are you in
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin?
I'm
Jess,
in
Over in Maryland.
Maryland?
New
I'm
Jersey.
in Florida.
Sorry. Erin, you're where?
Florida.
And Katie?
Maryland.
Maryland. I know here in central Indiana, all of the school districts in my county now have their own BCBA on staff and RBTs on staff. So we're seeing a huge shift. I know Florida is at the forefront of a lot of change because the Florida Institute of Technology is where some of the greatest minds of ABA are currently. And I think there's going to be a lot of change throughout the country. I know there was another article that I believe Maraya mentioned earlier that was talking about the different states that are implementing programs. And I think that we're going to start seeing the rollout federally. It's already been mandated. The states have slowly been rolling this out, and now it's coming down to the school districts, and now they're rolling it out. It's a long process because there's a lot of years that we have to make up for because of the past is the past. We learn as we research, and the research has proven that it is effective. And people like Dr. Temple Grandin, who they did a movie about, she's on the spectrum. She's a doctor of animal sciences. She travels the world speaking about autism. Her biggest proponent thing she says is kids need ABA, the sooner the better, that early intervention. And that's what this debate is at the forefront of it, because the schools are where a lot of these kids start, in preschool and kindergarten and first grade. And if we're ready, are we ready for our conclusion?
I wanted to add in some stuff to go against the con side for all three. Starting off, if teachers are able to be trained like on their side of the educational profession, why can't we add in ABA backgrounds in order to give them knowledge and experience behind interventions that are being used to treat individuals with ASD? That way, if they do need to implement ABA procedures, they have the background and understanding to not only limit the amount of time necessary to be trained effectively, but also to increase their scope of competence in the area of ABA intervention. Evidence-based practices in ABA are treatments that have been backed up by copious amounts of research and have been investigated and approved by a large amount of professions. The reason for this is so that the interventions being provided have been proven to be successful. So shouldn't this also be a factor in teaching practices, to teach in a specific way that has been researched and backed up by evidence? If they are able to make time to come up with effective and efficient ways of teaching, how come they aren't able to do this for ABA interventions?
All right, we have less than a minute, so.
Yep. As the number of children diagnosed with autism increases and more behavior challenges arise, the inclusive use of applied behavior analysis as an evidence-based intervention becomes a matter of great importance for all stakeholders, as Lauderdale, Litton, and Brennan stated. And as the pro side of this argument notes, ABA has been scientifically proven to be successful in universally treating behavior concerns. And as the con side of this argument notes, teachers lack sufficient training and have limited ability to utilize ABA with large class sizes. And in order for the successful merging of the medical and educational views of ABA, both sides need to be trained to utilize the best possible programs to socially improve the school performance for all children.